Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host, Nick Filato. Today we are here to break down the Giants' All-22 offensive film, if you want to call it that, against the New Orleans Saints, Nick. And where I want to start here is this. I watched this game, and I thought about this for a little while. I wonder if, especially when you watch a game like this on tape, if the Giants have enough dudes on their front. And by front, I don't just mean the offensive line. I mean their tight end group, their fullback group. If you want to use fullback, some teams have used them very successfully in recent NFL schemes. And then their offensive line across the board. Because in this game, dude, they were literally beat up on the line of scrimmage. That's what it looked like to me. And this was common across the NFL this week. I did some breakdowns of film for Beyond the Box Score, a show that we record on CBS Sports Fantasy early on Mondays. And so I watched Derrick Henry against the Texans defense. And I'm forgetting who the other back was that I watched that was in the similar spot. It was Eckler, who had that. But then there was one more back. I'm going to have to try to remember for some reason. I can't remember who that other back was, Nick. Bijan Robinson against Carolina's front. And all three of the games, the Giants game, the Barkley against this front, Derrick Henry and the passing game against that front, Desmond Ridder and Bijan Robinson against the Panthers front, they're all just physically dominated at the line of scrimmage. Blocks were not being made. Penetration was rampant. Every single gap was accounted for by the opposing defense. And that was what it looked like on tape to me. The Giants just got physically dominated at the line of scrimmage in this game. And every gap was accounted for. And just like in those games, there was just a lack of, I guess, I don't want to call it physicality. I think because I don't think it was an effort issue from the Giants. I just think it was an overmatched issue right now. They don't have a single tight end on this roster who can block except for Daniel Bellinger. I have no idea where the Giants are in 2023 with a one physical tight end kind of roster. It just doesn't make sense to me. They don't have a fullback. They don't have a second tight end who can do what Bellinger can do. So you can bring in some 12 personnel and really, utilize these guys, or maybe bring in one as an H-back sniffer, things that can just help you win at the line of scrimmage. So you're not getting murdered every play. And then across the board, I mean, we'll talk about it on the pod, Nick, but Justin Pugh, the regression from him over the last few weeks of the season has been horrible. This was the worst game of the year. Andrew Thomas is not himself by any means this year as a run blocker. He's just not himself at all. John Michael across the board, Ben Bredesen, a little bit of regression. Tyree Phillips, dude, he's the type of guy, he reminds me of Nick, like Mike Remmers when the Giants had Mike Remmers. That's who I'm reminded of with Tyree Phillips. Can you get by with Tyree Phillips? Yes. Is he going to have less of those glaring beat around the edge clips that go viral on Twitter than even an Evan Neal type? Maybe. Probably yes. But is he also just not your answer at all at right tackle? Yeah, he's not your answer at all. He's not physical enough for what I want out of a tackle by any means in the run game. And just overall physicality also in the pass game. He's going to walk back into the pocket all the time. It just doesn't look good to me anymore with Tyree Phillips. And he's passable. Mike Remmers was passable. There's worse. We've had worse. We've had Eric Flowers. We've had Bobby Hart. We've had worse throughout our lives as fans. But I look at it across the board on the front that the Giants put out there today. Not just the line, but everything about the front. And I was just like, they're outmatched by the Saints defense entirely throughout the entire game.
They were outmatched by the Saints defense, excuse me, and their zone runs were just not getting anywhere. The Saints were aligning with like a 2-eye and then a 3 technique on the other side. And then John Michael Schmitz would try to reach. But by that time, one of those guards, whether it be Ben Bredesen or Justin Pugh, would allow their defensive line to just slide off the block and then crash inside. And that was compounded by Demario Davis, who we don't talk about enough. Not just our podcast. I'm talking about the entire NFL landscape. Demario Davis is not discussed enough. What we saw, and Bobby Okereke and Mike McFadden, they're playing excellently this year, but I think we saw the best linebacker play that we've seen all season in that game with Demario Davis. And think about that. Think about some of the linebackers Giants. Fred Warner they played against. They play against the Cowboys when they have their linebackers. And Micah Parsons, he's a little bit different. He doesn't really factor into this, but he was everywhere. Whether it was power gap, like the one counter run that they ran, the New York Giants, that is, it was blocked up solidly with the offensive line. But Davis was in the backfield instantaneously, and he met Saquon Barkley right in the backfield. Every zone run, Davis is scraping over the top. He is flowing through trash, avoiding contact, beating the guards to their set points to cut off the angle, and then making the tackle. I think a lot of the run defense that they had was because of Davis. That, and I mean, look at that defensive line. They're long, they're physical, and they're wildly strong. Like Nathan Shepard, I loved Nathan Shepard when he was in college, and he ended up going to the Jets. Remember, he went down the Senior Bowl. He dominated the Senior Bowl.
He's the Canadian guy, right? He was working as like a bouncer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was working. He was either bouncer or grocery store. I feel like all the players who come from small schools, and they go into the NFL and they had like a year off from college, and then they just get realized they're either a bouncer or they're packing groceries like Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
Regardless, Carl Granderson, Kalen Saunders, who I absolutely love. Like that guy is a great dude. I got to deal with him. He was one of my players when I was down at the Senior Bowl. And he's like the life of the party kind of guy. I love Kalen Saunders. Dominant in this game. Tano Passanio, dominant. Brian Brezzi.
And that's like the whole freaking front, dude. They all just dominated and ate the crap out of the Giants. They beat them up. And think about like everyone.
No, I didn't name one guy deliberately, and that's Cameron Jordan, their best player up front, right? So it's just the Giants got beat up in the trenches.
Beat up.
There were some solid blocks by John Michael Schmitz where I was like, holy crap, in the run game, but it really just didn't matter. And the Giants found themselves in so many just third and excruciating long situations where they
every yard was hard to come by in this game.
It really was.
Whenever you're saying that about an offense, that every yard is hard to come by, not that every like first down is hard to come by. That's already a bad thing. If you're saying every first down is hard to come by, all right, it's bad. If you're saying every yard is hard to come by, you're literally not even able to generate positive yards every time you touch the ball. Like for the most part, it's just crazy, man. It's absolutely nuts to me. Where they're at with this, it's very disheartening to watch the offense. The defense is a little better. Go ahead.
I'll say this too. Pete Warner, very good linebacker. There were a couple runs by Saquon Barkley where it was actually blocked up. They were like, I'm not sure if they were duo or inside zone. I'd have to watch them again to determine what it was. But it was that type of blocking scheme where there were double teams up front, and Warner was the backside linebacker, and he cut in and he hit Barkley right at the line of scrimmage. But if Warner wasn't so instinctive on that play and so quick to beat the guard off the double team, Saquon Barkley might have had 6-7 yards, and maybe he could have made a safety miss, right? But when your linebackers are so dialed in and you're not dominating up front and you're on the road in a hostile environment, it's hard to establish the run. And the Giants just couldn't establish it whatsoever.
Yeah, and I'll say this on that front too, Nick, and I'll wait to dig up the stats to back it up because I am interested in, very curious about a few of these advanced stats, specifically breakaway ability now versus the 28 versus like early career 2018, force missed tackle rate, and then also yards after contact per attempt. And this is not this is a statement I'm making based on the entire tape of the season, not as much this game, though it is also present in this game. This game was also issues, just like I said, front dominated, but I just, when I watch Saquon Barkley these days versus like some of the best running backs in the NFL, I don't really see a lot of yards after contact from him almost ever at this point in his career, which is weird because he was a yards after contact king, both metrics wise and tape wise early in his career in 2018. He makes guys miss still. That's great. He still has that ability, especially in a phone booth. But it's not the same kind of power to his game that he used to have. And then the breakaway ability, that's obviously down. I mean, during his rookie season, he almost broke Barry Sanders and Chris Johnson's record for 40-plus yard runs. He had 9 of them. Nowadays, we're lucky to get 1 or 2 a year. And that's last year was 1 until the playoffs. And then this year, I'm sure he's had 1 or 2 at some point, but it's just not a big, no, it doesn't happen as much as it used to. And you can't even use the excuse of like, oh, well, all the situation's so bad, because the situation was crap in 2018 when he had all those runs. He did that independent of the situation. It was actually worse because it was a fully inside zone blocking team that didn't work at all. They didn't call any kind of duplicity to their run game. So I just don't it's fine. Like, he is what he is. He's a hard worker. He does all the little things. He makes spectacular catches. I think he's shown ability in the passing game that in this year that he maybe hasn't shown at all times or hasn't been an opportunity to show. But this to me doesn't feel like that much of an appreciating asset to me anymore. It just feels more like, in a lot of ways, a depreciating asset. But now that means the asset was so high. Like when he was doing those things, creating all that yards after contact, every tackle was tough. He would run through people, he would jump, hurdle, run through people, and then break things for 40. That was when he was sick Saquon, from Penn State versus USC days in that rookie season. But I don't know, man. I haven't seen it now in 2 years at this point. That version of it, at least. And he's still a solid player, but
nah, man. I didn't read into it. I didn't read into it like that. This. And I know you're not.
This is from the season.
Yeah, just from the season in general. Yeah, we knew he was going to lose a little bit, but still, I feel like Saquon Barkley has done a lot this year to warrant my reconsideration and re-signing him and bringing him back as a New York Giant. You look at games like this, though, and it's like, well, Saquon Barkley didn't do anything. There wasn't really a lot of opportunity for Saquon Barkley to do much in this game. Like, again, the Giants, they were throwing a lot on first down. I don't have the stats in front of me, but a lot of the drives, they were opening with these throws, and every single one of them seemed to be a drop or an incomplete pass. Ball sailed a little bit. Like the Giants receivers, Jalen Hyatt, they got 2 drops. Slayton had 1.5. I would say 1. The one on the sideline, I'm going to go with Dan Schneier here and say that was a very difficult catch. I think very good wide receivers make it, but that's not one where I'm like, Slayton,
about that back shoulder one.
Yeah.
That was
tough.
So for me, I'm very lenient with the receivers. That one almost hurts me more than I'll give you an example of what that hurts more. Remember all those like 70,000 crossing routes, like the horizontal plane crossers that Jones throws behind the receiver, and everyone's like, oh my God, he dropped it, but he had to like contort his whole body, like the Waller one from earlier this year, go all the way up here. To me, that is less of a drop than when someone dimes up a back shoulder like that. And that was good ball plays from DeVito. It was his best throw of the game. Make that play. Like that's back shoulder right out here. It's not like flipping your body, contorting it while you're running horizontally as fast as you can. I know they're both tough catches, but like that, the ones on the horizontal plane when they're behind the receiver bother me less than because that ball was a good ball from DeVito. It was his best throw of the game, I thought. So that one was a little tougher for me.
Yeah, I think it was more of a late adjustment by Darius Slayton to get to the football.
Which is kind of his MO, by the way. He's not great with those in-air body control adjustments. That's not a good part of his game, really.
And we haven't really seen it all that much either. Like we used to, I don't want to say bash Jones or chastise Jones, but we wanted to see Daniel Jones develop more rapport with his wide receivers in years past with the back shoulder throw.
Right.
When the Giants signed Kenny Golladay, we were like, yo, they're going to start running the back shoulder because Kenny Golladay. We saw 1 or 2, and we're like, oh,
one was from Glenn. The first one we saw was from Glennon.
It was from Glennon, exactly. Oh God, man, that's heartbreaking, man. Didn't we have one against the Saints in 2021?
Maybe.
Regardless of the fact, dude, just to go back to this game, look, and I know you weren't saying this about Saquon, that this game like Saquon's fault.
No, this has nothing to do with this game. This has kind of just been building, and then I
know
the season.
I know,
and it's not like I'm knocking him. He's still a great player, and he's their heart and soul. It's just like, is the yards after contact the same as it was? Is the tough yardage the same as it was? And obviously, we know the breakaway ability by the numbers is nowhere close to what it was.
Yeah, no, and those are numbers too. A lot of those are objective facts. Right?
Yeah,
and we know that it's going to depreciate just a little bit. Once you get older, you're going to lose that explosiveness and that burst. I think one aspect of Barkley that has definitely grown and developed has been the vision. We saw that like last year, the vision was astonishing. This year, I think it's still solid this year. It's just the blocking up front has been a little bit suspect at times. But I think the defining factor of this game wasn't just we got bitched up front and we were out physicaled by the Saints, if you want to term it that way. The Giants missed a lot of opportunities, like a lot. The Giants left a lot of plays on the football field, not just those drops that we were talking about. There were players that were open, which DeVito, I mean, in every game, DeVito has had some plays that he's left on the field. Daniel Jones does, Pat Mahomes does. So it's not something that, you're like, oh, this quarterback's terrible for that. But there were plays where you saw the smash concept. You saw the 7 pivot, and that's been the smash concept du jour that this Giants team has been running, especially against these man coverage teams. And the 7 just didn't come out this time, right? And plays like that. And you had the drops, like I said. You had a Tyrod with 32 seconds left in the second half. He missed Hyatt on that. Hyatt won off the line of scrimmage. Yes. The flat defender, like we've seen so much, he sat, bro. He sat because he saw the number 2 wide receiver, Wandale, sit and stick. He sat and read it, and Hyatt streaked up the sideline. And when I saw it on broadcast, I was like, oh, there had to be like, cloud safety over the top. We didn't see. That safety was like all the way on the hash. Once Hyatt was like raising his, like there was a lot of space, and it just wasn't thrown. And I'm not sitting here talking crap on Tyrod Taylor or anything like that, but little plays like that, when the opportunity arises, you got to take them, especially in games where you're getting kind of bitched at the line of scrimmage.
On that note, at least as far as what I saw, Nick, I would say there were definitely plays where I saw what you said, and obviously you brought up a few of the examples. I also felt like there were also plays, maybe not as many, but maybe close, where the Saints were really dialed into the route combinations the Giants were running and the depth, more importantly, the depth of what the routes were running. Because there were some plays where I felt like the Giants are running some of the concepts that have worked for Tommy DeVito over these last 3 weeks, and the Saints were like right where they should be from a depth standpoint. Now, some of those were also the opposite, where if the ball's out faster from Tommy and he anticipates to throw some of those those deep stick throws, he could make those throws. The ball just has to be out a lot faster before the receiver really gets into his break. But I don't know if I fully expect that from DeVito right now as a quarterback. Like, he's proven he can come in and like win football games for you in a grinded out style. This is kind of what the Giants are. Like if you look at it, the other thing about this game, Nick, and shout out to Adam Azer, the host of Fans Football Today, and he brought this up on today's Buy on the Box Score show. But over the last 4 games, basically the Tommy DeVito stretch, the Giants are running the fewest offensive plays of any team. This is by design. Like they are trying to limit plays in the game. They're trying the old Bill Parcells, Giants Bills Super Bowl strategy. Hold the ball, milk the clock, run it. Don't shorten the game. If you shorten the game, you have a better chance to win. And I think that's by design. They have Tommy DeVito at quarterback. That's what they want to do. So he's proven he can come in and like win the 2022 Giants style, because that was essentially what they did last year too in all their wins, the Giants, except for the Vikings game. They basically just shortened the game and won because of that, and the Colts as well. They just shortened games to win them. So like he can prove it with that style. I'm just ready, Nick, for a different style at some point of Giants offense. I'm past the days of the grinded out wins.
Yeah.
I get it. If you have to do it, you have to do it. And what Daboll's been working with the past 2 seasons from a personnel standpoint on the offensive line and at quarterback, this is all he can do. But I'm ready for some kind of hope that they can get back to a drop back pass game where they don't have to just try to grind wins out. They can try to win games in other ways.
There was also the 3rd and 7, and you touched on that a lot last night's show, and I agree with you. Yeah, you want a quarterback who gives you plenty of different
and
options
an O-line
in games, and not a specific, and an offense just in general, and not just hey,
just
just an offense. That's all we're asking for, right?
All we're asking for is to not have to grind these games out 13-10 with like 60 plays on offense. They're averaging like under freaking 60 plays on offense these games. It's like they're just not playing many plays. They're not really playing the regular football, shortening every game.
2 plays specifically, the 3rd and 7 on the first drive. DeVito, look, he got beat, or Darren Waller got beat around the edge because the Saints did a good job disguising their coverage, and the Giants slid John Michael Schmitz to the left. The Saints brought an extra rusher to the right, leaving Darren Waller, Saquon Barkley, and everybody to the right in a one-on-one matchup, and Justin Pugh just had no one to block on the left side. And if that didn't happen, if the protection actually picked up the Saints pass rush, Darius Slayton was wide open against cover 1 on a deep horizontal crossing route. And then there was also the 1st and 10 fake screen throw to Wan'Dale Robinson.
I thought he could rip that wheel or whatever that was.
Yeah, Slayton did a good job just like selling the wheel, and then he exploded up. A little bit more patience, it would have been, a fake screen. And then I think
that's what they were trying to do, screen. Right, Nick? Don't you think they were trying to run the fake screen? Yeah, he just wasn't confident in it, I guess.
Yeah, and also no one reacted to Wan'Dale, really. Like they gave Wan'Dale the space. Right. So DeVito was like, hey, it's 1st and 10. Let's pick up a couple yards. And I'm not going to fault DeVito for that, but just with a little bit more patience, you can execute that throw. You could take it, and Slayton would have birded that guy. Like he had the step and everything.
Yes. That's kind of the story of the Giants offense for the past few years. It's a lot of what ifs on tape as far as guys running open.
And we also, before we get into the tape that I have cut up here, there are instances of the stunts, because a lot of people on Twitter are talking about what the hell's going on with the stunts and the twists. Stunts. No, I'm just joking. For those listening, I'm joking with one of the possible listeners who tried clarifying to me that a twist is actually known as a stunt, just for my information, as if that is new information. But regardless, the stunt or twist, whatever you want to term it, that was giving the Giants a lot of problems, because John Michael Schmitz, look, they had a couple that they picked up, him and Justin Pugh, but they were brutal picking up the twists. And the I think 3 losses I had when I was charting this game on one specific twist was the one technique to Pugh's side would penetrate aggressively into the A gap and run into Pugh's outside shoulder. So he was firing off the line of scrimmage. John Michael Schmitz, he would attach it to the right of that one technique was a 5 technique, and then someone wide of the 5 technique. So you have 3 potential rushers coming from that side. So what the Saints did was that one technique would penetrate really hard, and then the guy in between the one technique and the wide rusher, that 5 technique, he would go like he would act like he's rushing to get Justin Pugh to open up, and then he would just, with excellent timing, just twist right around that one technique who was penetrating. And then the tackle had to account for that wide rusher. So Justin Pugh was put into a really tough spot on who he is blocking. And whenever the Giants were in 5-man protection or just 3-man protection to that side, with the twist being executed with such good timing with that aggressive one technique, it was really hard for the Giants to pick it up. It was going to be on John Michael Schmitz to pass it off really quickly and then take that looper. And JMS was a step behind on most of those.
Yeah, it's been, I posed this question on Twitter last night, Nick. If we end the 2023 season with question marks about all 4 of Joe Shane's major investments via the draft and the offensive line, that being John Michael Schmitz, that being Evan Neal, that being Josh Azudu, who unfortunately is injured, and that being Marcus McKethan. At some point, at that point, in my opinion, at least as a fan, you have to question the coaching and development or the scouting at that point, because it just doesn't really add up. Because as I mentioned on Twitter, I didn't fact check this because there's no point. I mean, the point isn't grinding out little numbers and making sure everything's right. It's, have teams really invested that much draft capital in 2 draft classes? I mean, those were 2 top 60 picks in Azudu and JMS, 55 for JMS, and 7 with Neal, plus an extra 6-round pick on Marcus McKethan. And that's just 2 draft classes. That's a lot of offensive line swings for 2 draft classes. And if I leave 2023 feeling about all of them, that's not to say like John Michael Smith, I think, is in bust category, but I'm not feeling great about John Michael Smith. He's been better on tape until this week, but like I haven't seen any Creed Humphrey flashes at all yet. And I always said, when you're investing in center, I need Creed Humphrey types to use a top 55 pick at that position, because otherwise I feel like I can find it in different ways via free agency, via UDFA, via late round rookies, and in the right system they could work. I mean, he's not playing center right now, but look what John Feliciano is doing with San Fran this year. It's disgusting, dude. He's having like a good year with San Fran, and he was horrible with the Giants. That's not horrible, but he was not great. And that also goes back to the point, like Nick Gates gave the Giants some average, solid to above average football at center. We wanted more from John Michael Smith. We still do want more, and it's early, so I'm not like ruling this anything, but I'm just saying, if we end 2023, dude, with question marks across the board, at that point, like, you can't just go back into 2024. Hey, Bobby Johnson, welcome back. Hey, all our guys scouting across the country. Hey, whatever you saw in Azudu, Neal, and JMS, keep it coming, baby, because we love it. It's going great. Like, something has to give. You don't just walk back in with the same strategy at that point, Nick. And I also wonder, like, how much is tied to Bobby Johnson, because Bobby Johnson has gone on record. He put it out in New York Post, or whoever he met with, Steve Sturby, or whoever that story was by. Apologize if it was Schwartz or whoever, Paul Schwartz, but he was like, yeah, I met with JMS. He was the smartest. He was great. I loved him. And then his input goes into making that pick. They try to give these assistant coaches a lot of leeway, because they're the ones who are going to mold them and work with them. So you handpick this guy. Let's get him up to speed. Let's get what you saw in him. And that goes for all these guys, Evan Neal, across the board, man. So I don't know, but we have a few games left. That's my focus, Nick. Just finding some positives from these key younger Giants offensive linemen.
A few things. I do not rule John Michael, and I don't think you do either. I don't rule him out as being like a building block. Like, look, centers are going to struggle. You're sometimes not going to be able to pick up every single twist. You're sometimes going to get got. That's just the nature, especially when you're a young player in the NFL. I have questions about Evan Neal. I do. I think everybody who
that's a way different tier than JMS.
Yeah, JMS, I don't really have questions with. And I have questions.
I don't have questions with JMS. I just want to see more to get me more hopeful. That's all that is.
There's flashes. There are a lot of
There are great flashes for him, especially when he's moving to the second level. That's been my favorite part of watching JMS, his movement skills.
I might have to pull it up. I think I put it on Twitter, but nobody wanted to see any Giants clips this week, which I completely understand. But he had a play where there was no feet getting tangled up. There was one where feet might have got tangled up, and that's why the finish was so aggressive. It was a 4th and 2 run by Saquon Barkley. He picked the defender up and just dropped him on the ground. Like, John Michael Schmitz has that wrestling background, and you see it.
I love that. Yes.
You see it, though. It's not just, hey, he has a wrestling background, he's out there tickling the defender. No, like, you see him understanding how to manipulate leverage and how to win at the point of attack by just using like wrestling type of techniques. And that's what I really appreciate about JMS. But to your Evan Neal point and your Josh Azudu point, Josh Azudu's in that same bucket as Evan Neal. Maybe not to the degree because he was injured, but I would argue
he didn't really get a chance to play guard this year. That's the craziest
That's my point. I would argue that it's more of how they treated Josh Azudu. They used his versatility almost against him. Now, I know that's like a weird way to phrase it, but he is versatile. It's like, oh, let's put him at tackle, and we need him at tackle.
Been good for his development.
That's not great for his development, especially not if you have and again, I don't know this for a fact, but if you have an offensive line coach who is not getting the most out of his players and is not developing them when they're at one position, what makes you think he's going to get the most out of them when you have him play 2 positions? So I kind of feel bad for both McKethan and Azudu.
Yeah, McKethan, to me, I don't know. I don't see too much upside in there long term. We'll see what happens.
Big guy.
He's a big body. That's something. He had a decent game at one decent game. But it's like, that goes back to my main point. It's not that I have any doubts for it. It's not even the word doubt, or like that is not really as much as just uncertainty is what I'm looking for. If I go in uncertain that JMS is going to be this dominant player, and I think we've seen flashes from JMS, but from what I've read and heard, there have been more flashes for Tittman over with the Jets. I heard he had some really, really good games before he got hurt. I just haven't really seen like there's flashes, but I want like a dominant game from John Michael Schmitz at some point down the stretch run. And I feel more confident in him right now in the run game than the pass game, if I'm going to be completely honest overall. But that's expected from a rookie. It's not John Michael Smith's probably fine. We're probably okay there. We hope. But like the question marks about Azudu, we didn't even get a chance to see him play guard this year. That sucks. Neal is good God. We don't even know what's going on there. And then McKethan, whatever, but it's still just like these young investments. That's if they don't at some point, if they don't improve or they don't give us the flashes we need, how do we feel confident bringing back Bobby Johnson is all I can really say at that point. It's just like there has to be a reason for this incredible incompetence on the offensive line with all these investments. That reason is either you scouting poorly or you're coaching poorly or developing poorly. One of those three things or all of those three things could be at play. We don't know. That's to be determined. It feels like it's more so the coaching development though, because Evan Neal was such a goddamn surefire evaluation, dude. Like maybe, just maybe, it has all to do with that he didn't do the athletic testing at the combine. He just doesn't have functional athleticism to play in the NFL. And then fine, like it could be. And that's like, then you get the scouting wrong. Everyone didn't have the same information to work with.
Let me rephrase. I don't necessarily think he doesn't have enough athleticism to play in the NFL. I just don't think he was as good of an athlete as we were led to believe.
With the box jump and all the stuff he did from that standpoint. Yeah. Because he may have that level of athleticism, that level of athleticism may not translate to him quickly getting out to defend, a pass rush up the arc. And all that stuff is possible with him. And then I don't really, then it goes back to like, do I even blame the Giants for that? Because everyone had no information to work with on Neal when it came to that because he didn't.
There's a lot of tape.
Yeah, dude, there's tape, but the tape was good. So it's like, it's like,
but the thing is, we watched Evan Neal. We went, if you can go back on this channel and check out our evaluations on Evan Neal, and the main reason of concern we've seen manifest all throughout his NFL career. It has not been corrected. He gets put on the ground a lot. He got put on the ground a lot against Missouri and Kentucky. And these teams
I agree with that, Nick. But there was so that's true. The main reason we have concerns about him is showing up all the time now in the NFL, translating 1-to-1 with our concerns. But then how about all the other good tape we watched of him at Bama? Why is that not showing up ever? It's just like, that's the part that frustrates me.
It's a huge jump. It goes to the development, right? Yeah. Like he's not developing. Because as you get more reps and more experience in the NFL, one would surmise that you would develop and you would get better and you would stop making those same mistakes. And those mistakes that only showed up a little bit in college, but were there. And then you were like, get him in the NFL weight room. Yeah, he'll be fine. He just hasn't been fine. So at what point you got to start looking at every variable and what could be the cause of you not developing at all? And that's where I'm at least. It's like, hey, it could be on Evan Neal. I don't think it's a work ethic issue at all with this kid.
No.
So where are we going with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, this discussion about the future of the offensive line is probably how I'm going to ultimately end up selling this podcast from an SEO standpoint, Nick, because I feel like this is going to be so much more interesting than the actual tape. Sorry to say for us and for you guys listening, but let's get into the tape and see if we can find some stuff that can interest us with regards to the offensive line.
One more thing with the offensive line, since we're just talking about it.
Yeah, no, more things the better. This is what's important right now.
This was by far and away the worst game from Justin Pugh.
By far.
It got to the point. And I had to reflect back on the Giants from, a couple months ago because they were so bad. And I was like, was that the worst guard tape overall we've seen this season? And I was like, nah, San Francisco. I was like, San Francisco, the Giants were so bad up front with McKethan and Glowinski. Glowinski had some really bad games. But it did make me think, if Pugh continues to struggle, if this level of play, which I hope it doesn't, and nothing really suggests that it would, but he is older now, he's coming off the injury, maybe he's fatigued. I'm not certain, right?
Probably that. Yeah, go on.
But we've seen this offensive line rotate. Do you think about rotating 64 back into these things?
Yeah, I'm sure they're asking themselves that question at this point. Now Pugh has said in the past he didn't sign to be, not playing. So whatever that, you take that for what that's worth. But a good point you made, which is, look, if you're on your couch and then you get called in the middle of the season to play and you don't have training camp to get your body prepared, you're probably going to hit a physical block. Like your body is just not in the same shape it was as all these other dudes preparing for the season. So it's like at some point I do wonder if there is just a wall that he's hit from a physical standpoint, taking, playing a game that he wasn't projected to play and not really having training camp or the offseason or, March, OTAs, all that to prepare for it. I don't know. It's possible, but if it continues to look like it did in this game, Nick, I don't think it's even a question. I think they will go to Glowinski because you just can't trot that out again. It was his worst game for sure, and I think he would tell you that himself. Obviously, it wasn't a good game for anyone. I felt like Bredesen, this was not a good game for him. He's kind of, he started to show some flashes. Now he's a little bit of regression there. Again, I harp on Tyree Phillips, who I did not like watching this game. Phillips again. Give me a Mike Remmers type of thing for him. If you need a Remmers, it's not as bad as it can be, but it's not what I want at right tackle either.
If you need a Mikey Remmers, yeah, I'm right there with you with Phillips. I think he's, again, I said this months ago, he was a great swing tackle to have. And then promptly about 3 weeks later, the Giants released him. And I was like, what the hell?
And by the way, if they hadn't, they could have kept him. They could have moved him to left tackle when they had that injury, and they could have kept Ezeudu at guard, which would have been better for Ezeudu. And what's better for Ezeudu is better for us because Ezeudu is part of the future. It's part of the future at guard, not left tackle. Phillips, you trot him out there at left tackle. You put Ezeudu at guard. That was a mistake by them.
It's one of the many calculated risks that this Giants team took that blew up in their face. And I hate to say this again. I don't think it's popular. But you have a guy on this roster who comes in when the Giants are getting blown out at wide receiver to run a couple routes.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, let's just call it what it is at this point. I love the guy. I really do. He's one of my favorite Giants of all time. But I would much rather keep a guy like Tyree Phillips at cuts, players like that who are going to have much more utility if things go downhill for you than a receiver who doesn't add anything to special teams and who hardly runs any routes for you.
Now, I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I think part of that was shaped by recency bias because the Giants had such a bad injury situation at receiver last year and over the past few years. They felt like that was the position that they needed those reinforcements for versus offensive line, which last year, for the most part, made it out pretty healthy with the exception of Neal, who's banged up a little bit, and Gates, who's banged up a little bit, and Feliciano a little bit. So maybe a little bit more of that, but either way, it's still probably the wrong calculated risk to make. Obviously,
I think it's that, but if it wasn't Sterling Shepard, they wouldn't have done it, right? So there is a soft spot here. We're not just making the best decision for the team overall. We are considering, and this could be a good thing or a bad thing, like however you want to interpret it. But we are considering other aspects of this, especially when you do think about, like, look, I know Jamison Crowder, but he's a proven punt returner, like a good proven punt returner, who is now not on the Giants, and the Giants have had their punt return issues for the second consecutive year.
And those have hurt them. Yeah, you're right, because that's actually hurt and helped them win football games versus obviously having the depth and the insurance that Shepard would provide. So good point by you. It's just another one of these types of decisions that you see happen in a season like this one.
I know. Unfortunate, but let's get to the tape, my friend, Mr. Dan Schneider. What's going on, Big Blue Banter listeners? I'm excited for the football season for several reasons, and one of those reasons is Prize Picks, which is North America's largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform, and it's so simple to use. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including professionals, sharks, and people who are going to exploit you, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you just watch the winnings roll in. It's very simple to play and gives you a little extra skin. I've set my picks in less than 60 seconds. There are so many stats to choose from, and the withdrawals of funds are easy and quick. Dan and I will be adding a segment to our show before every game where we pick our favorite stats, more or less yards or touchdowns, what have you, and we'll be discussing why from a scheme, matchup, and game theory perspective. I love their promotions and how easy their interface is to operate at Prize Picks. I may select more on tackles for a loss from Bobby Okereke or Kayvon Thibodeau next game. They also do other sports as well. It's a really cool experience. Please join Dan and I in the fun of Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/banter and use code BANTER for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/banter and use code BANTER for a first deposit match up to $100. You will not regret it. Make Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. There are few things better in the world than kicking back, watching some football, and biting into some delicious Little Caesars pizza. Order online during our Pizza pregame, 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day on Sunday. And get ready for some football and fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Old World pepperoni, extra cheese, Italian sausage, olives, onions, pineapple if you're into that. Put it on half the pie, the entire pie. There are so many other options that I don't have time to name. Slap that on a round crust, a thin crust, a stuffed crust, a Detroit-style deep dish. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the game. Dan, it is gift-giving season, and there is no better gift to give your loved ones, your friends, than an experience, a concert, a comedy show. You like Broadway? Check out a Broadway show. Go see a live sporting event. Maybe go check out the New York Football Giants if you want to. And the best place to get tickets for any of these events is Game Time.
Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BANTER, that's BANTER, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code BANTER, BANTER, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
The first play I have here is the first play of the game for the New York Giants. I just liked the aggressive approach. Now, it didn't necessarily carry into the entire game, or at least the Giants couldn't apply it throughout the entire game. But this was confirmed middle of the field closed by the Giants. One-on-one matchups on each side for Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt, plus splits outside the numbers by about 5 yards, and it was diagnosed, and DeVito does a good job holding the safety and then taking the shot to Slayton. And look at Slayton, man. That is a pure stacked I have you beat Paulson Adebo. Love putting that stuff on my chicken, you know what I'm saying? Adobo. And this is a win right here, but the ball is slightly thrown behind, and it's just not caught.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're in a dome here. You're throwing from the near hash. You have a good pocket to throw into. It's a bad ball from the quarterback. When people have discussed, or when I have brought up that maybe, I don't love this guy's arm talent from the NFL level, this is probably a rep that would classify for me, Nick, in this. Just, again, throwing from that super clean pocket, from the near hash, and just the ball kind of dies on the receiver a little bit. It's only slightly underthrown, but that makes all the difference. When you have a receiver stacking like that, perfectly executing his technique, put that ball on his outside shoulder and put it in front of him, and that's a catch every single time.
Especially with the safety coming over. This is slightly to the inside, a little bit underthrown. Just not a great ball from Tommy DeVito, but I did like to see Darius Slayton win at the line of scrimmage, and we'll watch that again. Win at the line of scrimmage, just quick little fire the feet, get Adebo to just kind of hold up, wait, and then you just win, and then you accelerate, and then you stack. And that's the stack right there. You position yourself between where the ball is going to be and that cornerback. And this is just a really nicely run route by Darius Slayton. It's just unfortunate that the Giants couldn't capitalize.
Yeah, should have been a big play for the Giants. Great play by Slayton there.
Later in the drive, the Giants, 12:44, 2nd and 10. This is a 17-yard completion to Saquon Barkley, and I just wanted to highlight the play by Barkley because this was a really nice catch. And Saquon Barkley, look, we've criticized Saquon Barkley as a receiver in the past. I still maintain that he's not Alvin Kamara, and he's not Christian McCaffrey, which a lot of people want to.
And I want to stop you there real quick, Nick, because I don't feel like this is just sometimes this paints us into corners that I don't think we deserve to be painted to. I don't think we've ever criticized Saquon Barkley. I think we've said we don't feel like he's anywhere near the Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara level receiver. That's not criticism there. That's basically essentially saying he's more in the top 10 range of running back receivers than in the top 1 or 2 elite.
Fair point. But yeah, I'm right there with you, by the way. This is a very nice play by Saquon Barkley. I love, and this is something Saquon has done a decent amount this year, is when the play has broken down. Look, he has a choice route. He can go inside, he can go outside against this player. The defender, I think that's Pete Warner, does a good job removing the inside, walling him off. So he does go outside. And then once he realizes Tommy DeVito is extending the play and he's rolling out in his direction, he just goes right up the field to give himself more of an opportunity to complete this pass. And then he works back to the football to actually make this catch through Warner. I think that's just a phenomenal play by Saquon. And this also came right after the running into the punter situation. So that's another reason why the Giants ended up getting a
I
3 points on this drive was because the drive was extended after running into the punter play.
The Giants' only points against the Saints came on 2 drives that were extended by penalty.
Yeah,
Crazy.
that's just a nice catch, just right
Great
there.
catch by Saquon Barkley. Great body control, great adjustment in the air. That's when I see plays like this from Saquon, I think, okay, this was why he is maybe a better receiver than we realize because he just doesn't have enough opportunities over the last however many years.
If he didn't have so many kind of like, what the hell Saquon drops in his career, then
Yes.
which he's had a decent amount of them.
Yep.
Like if we're going to be honest with the situation. All right, 8:31, a 1st and 10. Look, this is a play where Tommy DeVito tries to just take a shot to start the second drive. And here's Demario Davis recognizing that Saquon Barkley is in protection. And once he recognizes this, he green dogs, gets right through and just nails Tommy DeVito. And there's really nothing.
Yeah, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, it's okay. There's really nothing DeVito could do on this play.
Yeah, you were right. And I was just going to say, Nick, look at the route combination, dude. How often have we seen the Giants run this same freaking 2-man route combination to take a shot play? Like how often? Like they've put this on tape for 2 years now. I just don't know. Like what's the Yankee concept? Like I just don't know if this is something that you can keep putting on tape over and over. Look at the Saints, man. There's no real way to where to go with the football, in my opinion. Here,
I'm wondering if the Giants wanted Hyatt to flatten that out a little bit because he kind of runs into. I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah, it does look like weird route depth. You're right. They're kind of running at the same depth.
The release of Slayton takes him inside, and then he has to work around defenders that might not have been there, right?
Yeah.
So, like when they were designing this play, but the one defender, Warner, I think that is, kind of stayed with Daniel Bellinger. So Slayton had to kind of go all the way around to the middle of the field, where I think he wanted to probably stay on that hash, which altered the route concept itself.
He doesn't have much time to process it, DeVito, but if he gets that ball out quick there to, I guess that's Wandale in the flat, that has a chance to be a decently big play because the Saints are getting to depth to take away that deeper concept. And then you could see the defender try to like rally back to the flat, but it would have been too late if DeVito had quickly seen that there's nothing downfield and just looked quickly to the flat, but it would have taken quick processing, obviously.
And this is just a really nice play by 93, who just uses a double swipe to just remove the inside punch from Pugh and just goes right into the A gap. And Saquon then has to account for 93 and 56. Like, this is very instinctive by Davis. Like, Davis realizes Saquon Barkley right here. He's going to meet Saquon Barkley. He's like, okay, that's my guy. I'm going to go meet him. He's not blitzing, right? Look, he's not blitzing. He's looking at 26. Like, what's going to happen? Oh, 26 is taking 93 now. Oh, fires right in there and sacks DeVito. It's very, very smart linebacker. Very, very smart linebacker. You have a 3 technique who's teetering on a 4-eye, just basically right in the B gap. And he's just going to go in that direction. And this is just a flat out mistake by John Michael Schmitz, man. Like, John Michael Schmitz should not open up and then go and help Pugh when he has a potential of the looper coming in. Because now you have 3-on-1 and no one even picks up 96. So he'd probably be the first to admit, like, yeah, I messed up on that. Maybe 93 sold like he was going to go inside. You could see how he's kind of shaded to the inside. His numbers kind of point towards John Michael Schmitz. So maybe John Michael Schmitz thought that he could win through the inside shoulder of Justin Pugh and then go right into the A gap. And that's what prompted Schmitz to attack him and look for the work. But look, you got to be cognizant of these stunts and twists. And this is about as easy as it gets for 96, man. No one was even there to pick him up.
Yeah, you have anytime you see 3 of your offensive linemen at the end of a play on one guy, you know someone screwed up at somewhere along the line.
Yeah, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. We're going to move on to 3rd and 12, 29-yard gain to Darren Waller from a 3-by-1 set. This is a nicely cooked up play from Brian Dable, from Mike Kafka, because they have a pressure look, the Saints. So you're going to see the pressure look and you see a bunch of guys on the line of scrimmage. So typically when you give a pressure look and then you bail off the line of scrimmage, the players who are bailing, the defenders who are bailing off the line of scrimmage, they're always going to turn towards the passing strength, which is going to leave, when you're in a 3-by-1 set, that lone receiver in a 1-on-1. And that's exactly what happens. And Tommy DeVito is aware of this. I'm sure this is a product of coaching. You're going to see 20 and 56 both bail off. Where do they go? They go and they look at Wandale Robinson and they look at the 3 wide receiver side, leaving a 1-on-1 matchup with scrambling linebackers who are turned to the passing strength for Darren Waller to feast on. And Tommy DeVito quickly realizes this. It's going to be a bail. You're going to have blitzers coming from the 3 receiver side. Now he knows that he has that 1-on-1 matchup with a defender who is 10 plus yards off Darren Waller. This is an easy pitch and catch for Tommy DeVito. And it's honestly not a great throw. It's low into the outside. And Darren Waller does a very good job securing the pass. But
yeah, well,
I appreciate this play.
Yeah, you broke it down great, Nick. And I think the best part about this play is that it is a bad throw from a ball placement standpoint from DeVito. And Waller does a great job of catching a throw that's behind him and then finding a way to transition and lose absolutely no ground in his post catch ability to create the most yak he can possibly create on this play. Obviously, at the end, he slides, he's about to get crushed. But like, that's a tough play because the ball is thrown behind him. He has to snatch that, not lose any momentum, and still beat the defender upfield.
Yeah, this is probably the best play on offense from the Giants.
The best play by an offensive player.
And you have the blitz coming from the passing strength, and John Michael Schmitz does a good job seeing it a little late. Zach Bond tries to slip in, and he gets a piece of Zach Bond and knocks him down. But Tommy DeVito was releasing the football around that time. Now we're going to have that 1st and 10, the fake screen wheel that we were talking about a little bit before. I love the motion to get to a bunch that is not condensed. So you have a bunch just at the top of the numbers, and you're going to have the screen. You're going to have 17 go, and then the motioning player or you're going to have 17 sit. Wando Robinson is the screen defender. He just sits right at the top of the numbers. Darius Slayton, who was coming in motion, acts like he's going to block for the screen. You could see, and then he just runs upfield. Tommy DeVito, I think it just took a little bit too long for it to materialize, and he saw Darius Slayton kind of draw that defender away from Wando Robinson, which was his cue to throw the football. So he promptly throws the football. But if you do look at Slayton had a little bit of leverage, but I'm sure it was told like, hey, if Slayton removes that defender, throw the ball to 17 and just take what you can get. It's just unfortunate Giants couldn't really get anything because they rallied and tackled very quick.
Yep.
Now we're going to have this is, I think, just the end zone view of it. You see that little pump action from Tommy DeVito. Didn't really fool them too much, but still, I appreciate it. Now we're going to have the stunt that I was talking about. You got the one technique. You have the two defenders to the outside, and you're going to see aggressive penetration of the A-gap, step towards the tackle, let the penetration go into the A-gap, and then loop around with just great timing. And you can see how both 92 and 90, they're unblocked on this play because it's executed so well. And you can also see how the tackle is going to be occupied by that wide defender. This is a greatly timed twist stunt from the New Orleans Saints, and it was not passed off. Like John Michael Schmitz, you got to pass at the Pew. Pew didn't seem like he was ready to assume 90 as a responsibility. So from that standpoint, it's kind of on both the tackle and the guard. And then JMS is just a little slow to get to 92. And by that point, Pew gets pushed out of the way. This was not a good game for Justin Pew.
Nope.
That was a 3rd and 11. Now we have a 3rd and 7. We're going to see the same exact thing again. Inside looper. You see go right through the A gap. 92 is going to loop right around. This time, John Michael Schmitz's guy, who he was attempting to pass off to Justin Pugh, pass off doesn't happen, and 90 just ends up winning. And I don't even know if JMS was aware this was a twist because 90 did such a good job, Dan, winning off the line of scrimmage. Like John Michael Schmitz is not in a position to flip his hips and take 92 here.
Correct.
And maybe he recognized that Pugh was not ready to take this block anyways. And I don't know the protection calls for the blocks. Like I'm not 100% sure. All I know is the twist pickup was very bad in this game. And that was another example of that same alignment. And now we're going to have another one. This is a different execution here, but you're going to have the one technique. He's going to go all the way to the opposite A gap, penetrate, and then John Michael Schmitz and Ben Bredesen aren't on the same page. They both open up. Nobody communicates it. And it just seemed like maybe the Superdome being really loud, the communication was so off because that was a very, very bad effort by the Giants offensive line, not from an effort standpoint, but just from an execution standpoint. They were not on the same page for much of this game.
Yeah, one of their worst games of the year, which is, of course, saying a lot. We don't have any major superlatives for this week. There's no unheralded player. There's not much of anything. There's really not even a best throw, best route. There's maybe you could find that, but not much. Best player overall, like I don't have anyone, Nick. It's not really Andrew Thomas. I didn't think he had his best game, but I guess if you had to give it to someone, you could give it to Andrew Thomas if you want. Pass blocking grade 1 through 10. I wanted to do the blocking grades though.
Yeah, the blocking grades. I have a 1.9 for pass blocking. It was brutal. There's no other way around it. It was brutal pass blocking up front.
I'm going 1.1, just even lower. Just like you said. I mean, part of it is the communication, the loudness of the Superdome, but it was bad. The run blocking for you, that was another one that I was really disappointed in.
Yeah, I had a 2.5. It was quite bad.
I had a 0.7, Nick. I 0.7. I thought this was the worst run blocking of the season by a margin for me. Everyone lost. I felt like they were just totally brutalized at the line of scrimmage in the run game. So yeah, that's a wrap. Like the coaches like to say, they like to bury the tape and put it in the backyard or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have any physical tape, so we can't do that. But we'll move forward past this game and we'll look towards some other things we can kind of pull out of the rest of the season. The offensive line, as we discussed a lot tonight, Nick, I'll be very focused on the development of JMS. Evan Neal hopefully gets to play again this year, and we'll see what happens there. But thank you for tuning into Big Blue Banter Podcast. Defensive podcast is going to be coming probably tomorrow at this point, or a little bit later from when you hear this. Thank you again for sticking with us through a season like this. And at some point, we'll be moving forward to the off-season plan, and that's going to be fun to discuss everything there. So have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.